start?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So
It's going live.
if you recall that in the last lecture where we stopped, we said that for the case of patentability of any invention, we first said that our inventions must first go through a filter number one. And I will again go back to that filter number one. Filter number one. And what was the filter number one? That the law says that according to the law, certain inventions are not considered to be inventions within the meaning of the act. And those types of inventions, there's a list. And we said that if my invention falls in that list, then it will not be given a patent. Why? Because that is not considered to be an invention in the meaning of the act. The act does not consider that to be an invention. Point number one. So that is my filter number one. Filter number two. So if it survives filter number one, then it goes through filter number two. And the filter number two has three criteria. One is called novelty, one is called inventive step, the other is capable of industrial application. And therefore, all the three conditions must be satisfied. Must be satisfied to get a patent. What I did not mention to you, or maybe casually mention to you, is that in filter number one, there is one more additional point. That if my invention is related to atomic energy, if my invention is related to atomic energy, and that atomic energy as defined in the Atomic Energy Act in India, then my invention will not be considered an invention within the meaning of the act. And therefore, I will not get a patent for an invention that relates to atomic energy. Okay, so that also is an extra criteria in India. So any invention related to atomic energy in India as defined in the Atomic Energy Act, it does not get a patent in India. We will look at ramifications of this later. But today we will elaborate on filter number two. And in filter number two, here we spent time last time in the lecture on what is novelty. And we said that if the essential features of my invention is found in one single public document, or it is found in one single public source, then my invention is not novel. In which case, I will not get a patent at all because it does not satisfy the condition of novelty. And we have taken an example. I said, look, if my formulation has A, B, C, D, and then I said that if document number one discloses AB as a mixture, in document two, they do BC, and document three, it does CD, then my formulation is still novel. Why? Because A, B, C, D was not found in one single publicly available document. However, by combining three documents, you are not killing the novelty. Therefore, it is novel. So my A, B, C, D, the mix which I made, the formulation which I created is novel. Now, so I pass the test of novelty. Any questions at this stage before I go to the next concept, please? Anybody? Anybody wants to elaborate or ask any question at this stage?
Sir,
Please don't feel shy. Please ask.
Sir,
Yeah, you can be a bit loud and please ask.
in the filter number 1, you said that if it is just a mixture of a few things, then it is
Correct.
not legally considered an invention.
That is, if it is a mere admixture, mere. If it is a mere admixture, it is not considered as an invention. Now I'm saying that my mixture is not a mere admixture. Okay? And how do I say it's not a mere admixture? I'm saying that as far as my invention is concerned, my A, B, C, D, when I mixed, first of all, there is no public document that was available where A, B, C, and D have been mixed. So I pass the criteria of novelty. Now, to test whether my mixture is a mere admixture or not, then I must go, let's go back to here, that a substance obtained by mere admixture, resulting only in the aggregation of properties of the components thereof, or a process of producing that substance is not considered to be an invention. Which means that if I mixed A, B, C, D, and if the resultant of this mixture A, B, C, D is only the property of this is 0.25 of A, 0.25 of B, 0.25 of C, 0.25 of D. If the property was a mere addition of the weighted, quantity weighted, the property was weighted by this weight percentage or whatever, then it would fall into a mere admixture. So even though my thing was novel, I will not get a patent because it's a mere admixture. How will I prove that it is not a mere admixture? I have to show that there is some synergy when I mix this. So there is some sort of an interaction between these, but they are not mere admixtures, and they are not only aggregation of properties of the components thereof. If I do that, then it will pass the test of this. And if there is no other document where A, B, C, D has been shown, has been mixed, then I will pass the test of novelty. Have I answered your question?
Yes.
Okay, good. So please stop me like that and ask question so that I'm able to give you an explanation. Now, important. Now the next part is so we have understood the concept of novelty. Now let us come to this concept of inventive step. Now see, you will say, I have an invention, therefore there must be an inventive step. No. In case of patent law, we use the term inventive step in a different way. What does it say? That it must be non-obvious, must have a technological advancement with regard to the existing state of publicly available knowledge. That is not obvious to a person skilled in the art without undue experimentation. So which means that let's assume that my A, B, C, D, let's assume that nobody had mixed the A, B, C, D, but I have the novelty part. Fast. Now take document number 1. Tells you if you mix A and B in a particular way, then the property of that is a synergy between A and B, and therefore you get a synergistic output of A and B. There is document 2, which says if you mix B and C in a particular way, right, then there'll be a synergy between B and C. There's a third document which says if you mix C and D in a particular way, you get a synergy. So let's say what I do, I mix A and B in a certain way, by learning from the first document. Then I add to this mix, and then I get the synergy, mix D to this, and then I get a synergy between A, B, C, D, right? So I have learned that there is from document 1 that it is possible to get a synergy between A and B. From document 2, I learned that there is possible to get a synergy between B and C. Document number 3, I understand there's a possible way of getting synergy between C and D. Now somebody may come and tell, oh, what great thing have you done? You mixed A, B, C, D, and here they have told you the procedure of how to get the synergy if you mix A, B, C, D in this way. So what somebody will come and tell, some expert will look at it and say, look, what have you done? You've only combined the 3 known literature processes and you've got your ABCD. So even though it's novel, granted, it does not have an inventive step because it is obvious to a person like me who is also a chemist that if I read these 3 documents and take the learning from each document and simply put it together, right? Then I get a synergy between A, B, C, and D. In which case, your invention will be considered not to have an inventive step. Now, how will you argue against this? Anybody? How will you argue against this? That okay, yes, there are these 3 documents, but my thing is still not obvious. How will you argue? Anybody?
I will show a step that is not mentioned in the documents.
Sorry, tell louder, please.
I will show a step that is not present in the documents.
Right. So you will show that if I follow if I follow document number 1, document number 2, and document number 3, and if I put these 3 processes together in sequence, then I may not get the desired synergy. I may get synergy, but not the best synergy. Means that I have to bring some other parameter to get the synergy, right? The desired synergy, in which case it may not be obvious. So we have to bring in all those and do these experiments. So when you're doing your research, you will then plan your research to design your research such that you get, for example, a synergy of that. So let me give you an example to start with. Let me give you an example to start with. Okay. Have any one of you taken, have you heard of an injection called Dynapar? Anybody? Have you heard of an injection? Have any one of you taken a painkiller injection?
So not
Have anyone
taken,
even
but I've
taken
heard.
Sorry?
So not taken, but I've heard of it.
Okay, you heard of it. Good, good. So, when you take this diclofenac, have you heard the term called diclofenac sodium?
Yes.
You go and look at, these Volini gel.
Diclofenac.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Volini gel has diclofenac. Move has diclofenac. Now, the interesting part is that also there is an injection called Danapa, which also has diclofenac. Now, interesting. Diclofenac is a very old molecule. Everybody knows about diclofenac. Now, if you take diclofenac sodium has very low solubility in water. Very low solubility. And so, when you want diclofenac to work on your body, then you must have inside your body at least 75 milligrams of diclofenac sodium. Okay? Now, because it is not very soluble, it is way back in 2000, 2001, the injections that were available in the market with diclofenac sodium, you could get, you know, an injection only with 25 milligrams of diclofenac sodium in 1 ml. So those injections were 1 ml. Why is it 1 ml? Anybody knows why the injections are 1 ml? Anybody? Why it is desirable to have a 1 ml injection? Anybody?
So can you please repeat the concentration?
The concentration is 25 milligrams in 1 ml. Why? Because 75 milligrams cannot be dissolved in 1 ml. Only 25 milligrams can be dissolved. So the injections that were available that time in 2001, 2002, only 25 milligrams per ml. Okay, but I'm asking you a question. Why that 1 ml is the volume of the injection? Why 1 ml? Anybody? Anybody has an idea? All of us have taken injections. And generally, where do you take the injection?
So
Generally,
that
where do you?
we can directly inject it into the
Yeah,
bloodstream.
but where do you take the injection normally? You take it here, right?
Intramuscular. Yeah.
You
Yes.
take it here, right? Now, when you take it here, that means it goes into your muscle. And if you take more than 1 ml fluid going into the muscle can actually rupture. You generally don't put more than 1 ml here in your arm. But if you're to take 75 milligram, and if each injection is 25 milligram, so how many injections you'll have to take?
3.
3. Right? That means you'll have to take 3 injections. If you're afraid of 1 injection, then what happens to you? You take 3 injections. So people used to take that. Or what will you do? You will take a drip, correct? You'll put it in saline, take a drip, and then you have to get admitted. You take 75 milligrams of diclofenac, and you take a drip. Or they would take 75 milligrams in 3 ml, but 3 ml cannot be put in the arm. So generally it's put in the buttocks. What they do is they use a bit of local anesthesia called lidocaine, and then they inject in the soft part of the buttocks. So there was somebody who came and said, no, I will dissolve. I will create an injection where I'll have 75 milligrams in 1 ml. Correct? Nobody has succeeded in getting an injection of 75 milligrams in 1 ml. So what did they do? They read literature. And when they read literature, they found that in some literature, it was mentioned that, when they mix the same class of alcohols with water or in water, then it is possible to dissolve 50 ml in an aqueous alcohol mixture. But in that alcohols, there were the mixed alcohols. These mixed alcohols belong to the same class of alcohol. So primary with primary, secondary alcohol with secondary alcohol, tertiary alcohol with tertiary alcohol. And they managed to do 50 milligrams. So somebody came and said, no, what will happen if I mix a primary alcohol with a secondary alcohol and water, or a secondary alcohol, tertiary alcohol and water? And he found that he could dissolve 75 milligram in 1 ml. The mixture of alcohols of this type. So question would be that if somebody told you a mixture of, the same class of alcohols will give you 50, then it's a mere experimentation that if you mix a different class of alcohols, you may get, you may not get. Now, a chemist will always think like that. But then what happens? That when you put 75 milligrams in 1 ml and you are able to dissolve it, you say, oh, I've got it. Then they found that the viscosity of this particular mix went up. And if the viscosity goes up, then you cannot give it as an injection. So what is the way they did? They then mixed not a viscosity reducer, they mixed something else. And with that mix and this 75 milligrams in 1 ml, all that put together gave the right concentration, gave the right viscosity, gave everything. That injection was patented not only in India, but in 60 countries around the world. That injection is called Danapal. It's one of an Indian inventions. That one invention, that one Danapal has made several thousands of crores of rupees by now. So why is it not obvious? What was the inventive step? The inventive step was that when you were able to dissolve 75 milligrams in 1 ml, taking some learning from different types of literature. So you were able to dissolve it by studying different types of literature. And what was not clear or what was not obvious was how to reduce the viscosity without adding a viscosity modifier. That was not obvious. That's why that got the patent. Are you understanding now? Any questions at this stage?
Sir, I have a question.
Please ask.
And it's a very generic question, maybe not very relevant to what you have just now said. But we hear that companies like Apple and Samsung, they make 700 or 800 patents a year, each
Yes.
of them individually. And all of them mostly get related to a smartphone, for example, and how the smartphone is working. Now,
Correct.
if we look at the development of smartphone over the years, since it got launched in 2007, as end users, we don't find these many inventions being included in the smartphone. Over the years, 700 every year in one device, etc. How is it a purely technical domain, or is there a legal angle also attached to it, or interpretation in terms of language and other things that normally get associated with litigations and all of that? Can you please share something on that?
I will elaborate on that. It's a very good question. See, what happens is that when you are looking at diverse problems, each problem you find a specific type of solution. You find a specific type of solution, you file a patent for that solution. Then you slightly change the parameters and you find the problem is slightly different. So you file another patent. Like this, you go on filing your 700 or 800 or 1000 patents. Some of those you use in your product, okay? And some of those are strategic where you stop others from using it. So there are two elements in patenting. One, where I will use certain things, and obviously I will stop others. The others, where what I call a ring fence. I protect my invention with a whole bunch of patents around it so that my competitors cannot penetrate my system. Have I answered your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So there is a strategic end. There is a strategic end to it. And that is how we look at patents. It's not that every patent I do, I will use. I will create a barrier around me. But people cannot come into my product. And I create those sort of barriers. So that if somebody wants to come into my type of system, then he has to cross my barrier Either he will do research and find another way of doing the same thing, in which case he may escape my barrier. On the other hand, if the person wants to use mine, then I will take a license. I mean, he will take a license from me, in which case I will give him permission, and then I will do a strategic deal with him. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah. So now coming back to the inventive step, let us say that, I have 4 documents, and, somebody says, oh, you have just read those 4 documents, and what you have done is picked up this from this document, picked up that, picked up that, picked up that, and you put it all together. Big deal. What did you do? Now there, what we generally do is show that when I take the learning from each document and try to combine, I may not get the best combination, or there could be a new problem which I may have to solve. In the case of bacteriophilic injection, it was the viscosity. So yes, you learn from 3 documents or 4 documents or 5 documents how to dissolve 70 milligram in 1 ml, but none of those documents taught you or even thought about that there was a viscosity issue. Because without solving the viscosity problem, you can't convert that into an injection. So you have to constantly analyze. So let us take a few more examples, right, on that. So that is called inventive step. So let us say that the invention must show a technological advantage over the known art. And so I was just trying to give an example. Let us say that A plus B in the presence of an acid, so hydrochloric acid gives C. So if someone does an experiment or reaction in the presence of sulfuric acid, okay, let's say, as I said, somebody published a paper in a journal on 1/4/2021, and that used AB in the presence of hydrochloric acid. If somebody read this paper and did an experiment with AB in the presence of sulfuric acid, okay, you go to file a patent. Now, will this be considered to be obvious, or is there an inventive step? So, first of all, if you take hydrochloric acid and sulfuric acid, both are inorganic acids, correct? So, if I took, let's take a very simple example, right? If I did it, that is, if the pH had to change only, right? And I got the reaction in hydrochloric acid. Now I simply replace hydrochloric acid with sulfuric acid. It is novel because, where it used hydrochloric acid, here I am using sulfuric acid. Therefore, my reaction satisfies the condition of novelty. However, hydrochloric acid is an inorganic acid. Sulfuric acid is an inorganic acid. So if I did my reaction in sulfuric acid, and instead of getting a chloride, I got a sulfate, it's quite obvious. Though the novelty is passed, the inventive step will not be passed. But suppose you try to carry that reaction out in an organic acid, and let's say the reaction did not go through. Maybe then you have to do something. In which case, in inorganic acids, maybe it goes through, because those are strong acids. But the moment you go to a citric acid, which is a weak acid, you may have to change the conditions substantially to get this particular reaction going. In which case, you can say, my thing not only satisfies novelty, also satisfies inventive. Like this, you may, for example, Suppose, how many of you are engineers in the group? Any mechanical engineer? Any mechanical engineer in the group? I'm not getting a response, but doesn't matter. But suppose I tell you that I put a Mercedes car in front of you, right? A Mercedes car. And I said, can you give me a car? Another Mercedes car. By looking at this car, can you make a Mercedes car which will be 1/3 the size of this car? What would you do? Would you scale everything down by 1/3? You scale everything down by 1/3 and make it, and still it would work as a car? Would it?
No.
No. Now that small gear system, the small braking system, the small, all those which are there, right? All those will not work simply on a scaled down basis. The technology changes when you scale down. Therefore, if you want the same function of a small car as that in a big car, you'll go into a totally different technology. And therefore, simply scaling it down may give you novelty. But to get the inventive part, you have to change the gear system, you have to change the transmission, you have to change everything. There's a whole bunch of things which are very intricate. And therefore, you need to look at the inventive steps very, very carefully. Then, of course, the last part is here, that it must be capable of industrial application, or it must have some usefulness. So which means, as far as my invention is concerned, if I want to get a patent out of my invention, A, it must go through filter number 1, where there's a list of inventions, and those list of inventions are there. So my invention should not fall in that particular list. Also, it should not be related to atomic energy as defined in the Atomic Energy Act. All that is in filter 1. In filter 2, that I read a whole bunch of literature. And when I read a whole bunch of literature, right, my invention should not be derivable merely by combining those literature. I must bring in an inventive step into the process, a non-obvious thing, which is non-obvious to a person skilled in the art. And only then I satisfy the criteria of inventive step. Last but not the least, it must be capable of industrial application, or it must be useful. Is that clear? Is this clear?
Yes.
So which means I go back to this, I have to pass through filter 1, I have to pass through filter 2. Only if I pass through filter 1 and pass through filter 2, that my invention will satisfy all the conditions of patent. Now, any questions at this stage, please feel free to ask.
Sir, in one of your slides, there were last two lines which said how they are evaluated, inventive step and novelty.
Yes,
Can you-
yes, yes. So the invention must have technical progress to demonstrate, including some unexpected advantage or results. So let us say that when I do certain type of experiments, let's assume for a moment, argument purpose, right? Let's take an argument. Let's take an example. Say, for example, if you say that here is a gear system, okay, which has got, these are the selected parts of this. Let us say here this is where the gear is. It engages and then will disengage, engage. When in the car you change the gear system, what happens? You engage, you disengage. And because these are different, your car goes from gear 1 to gear 2 to gear 3, and the speed changes to the transmission. And that gets transmitted to the wheels. Now, if I want to play with this gear system, and I would do it in such a way, the engagement and disengagement of the gear is there. It creates a bit of friction here. That's why you put in the oil and whatnot in the gear compartment. But let's assume that if I design my gear system in such a way that I need to change my gear oil not very often. If earlier it was once a year, I may now need to do it once in 4 years, which means that I've designed my, these gear system in such a way that the attrition is not that high. So that is a not very obvious. So what should be the geometry? What should be the structure of these serrations to get what should be the material? It's a combination of a whole bunch of parameters that give you that unexpected advantage. And that is how you work out whether you have an inventive step or you don't have an inventive. Have I answered your question?
Yes, sir. In your example of the gearbox that you have said, if the new solution happens to be very expensive,
right?
Does that have any bearing on acceptance or rejection?
Well, it will have bearing in the sense. Now, there are two parts to the story. Now, when I come to this gear system of mine, and if I'm putting it in a very expensive car, then the cost will get absorbed there. But let's assume that you have studied my gear system. So you come with another gear system and show that if you did it in a certain manner, you get the same advantage at a lower cost, right? Then you will show that that is the technical advancement which you have done. Or if you use less material than I use, then you have an advantage. In which case, you get a patent for what you did, because what you will include it, and the car which will come out will be cheaper than the car which I will make. So
No,
yes,
sir. I'm asking in the other direction, as in the effort of creating something functional, I end up creating a design which is far more expensive actually. So maybe not practically usable, but nevertheless, it's a solution for future, say 10 years or 15 years down the line, it might become very cost effective. So, but at this moment, yeah, does it stop me from going ahead?
Not necessarily. Point is, question that comes in is that when somebody takes that objection, then you'll have to justify in a techno-legal way what is it that you are offering, right? So you have to bring those type of arguments in. You're right. 10 years down the line, somebody may use it. So question is, therefore, it comes out how you write your patent, how do you express it, how do you put your patent. Therefore, writing a patent is very different than writing a paper. That's why writing a patent is very tricky.
Yes, sir.
So it depends on how you justify it. Please go ahead. Somebody was asking another question. Was somebody asking a question? Okay. So, anybody, or should I proceed?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. So let us go to the next part. Let us go into what is the patenting process. So we are doing research. So what do we have to do? First part, very important, is when we do literature search. My question to you is, when you do literature search, what sort of literature search do you do normally? Anybody? Please feel free. What type of literature search do you do? Anybody?
Latest problem in the field.
See, when you do your literature search, you're always doing a literature search in the context of the problem that you're trying to solve. Correct? First, you have to write your problem down. Then you do a literature search because you will have to do the research in the context in which you are trying to solve a problem, or in terms the context of your problem definition. Isn't it correct?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good. So then what do? You generally look at journals, you look at books, you look at all sorts of literature on the net. But how many of you have ever looked at patent literature? Have anyone looked at patent literature? And interestingly enough,
Yes, sir.
very interestingly enough, if you are working in smart materials, if you are working in artificial intelligence, if you are working in certain areas of biotechnology, if you are looking at, energy saving systems, a whole bunch of these things, and all that literature, more than 60 to 70% of the literature is not available in journals and books. They are generally available only in patent literature, which also is open. It's in the public domain. It's a separate issue. Whether you can use it or not is a separate issue. All that information is available. So therefore, if you do not do a good comprehensive literature search, it also includes patents, you are probably designing your research based on only 30 or 40% of global literature. In which case, the chance of you repeating what is already known is almost 100%. And even worse is that you may be repeating something that somebody has already patented. In which case, when you come up with your work and you want to commercialize, that will become a big hindrance. Therefore, looking at patent literature together with all other literature is something that you must do. Now you may say that nobody has taught me how to do that. So the important part, yes, we'll have to teach you how to do it. So that's a very important part. So while designing your work, while planning your research, you will have to do this very detailed literature search. And it is not enough. Why? Because literature is coming continuously. Patents are being filed, patents are being granted, patents are being published continuously, like your journal paper. So you have to look at it continuously as you do your research. There was a part of your research methodology. It was extremely important to do those type of literature search, which includes patents. So that is the first part. Without that, you cannot be designing your research properly. Anybody does literature search including patents in our group?
Yes, sir. I did, but not too much.
So we have to teach you how to do it. And what I would propose to, that we will have to train people in our institutions, especially in our libraries. We'll have to train them up to do that so that they can help you to do this type of research. Without chance of you repeating what is already known, in patent literature is very, very high. That's dangerous. So then you may be wasting your time. That is something that we need to do. So that's the first part. The second part is that once you have established a proof of concept, if you have a problem, I think I have a solution. I do certain work and I come and establish proof of concept. Have you heard this term called proof of concept? Have any one of you heard this term called proof of concept?
Yes, sir.
Good. So in proof of concept, I think this should be my approach. I think this is the way I will do the thing. And I do my experiments and I see that my idea is working. May not be in the best possible way, but I know that I'm in the right direction. When I come to that stage, that is called proof of concept. Now, depending on the area in which you work, field in which you work, where lots and lots of people are working, the chance of you getting beaten by somebody is very high. Under those circumstances, what we say is, moment you establish a proof of concept and you think it's got a very high commercial potential, then we suggest that please go and file what is known as a provisional patent application. The moment you file a provisional patent application, the date on which you file the provisional patent application, the entire global literature, as your patent application is concerned, it's the total literature as of that date only. That's why your first filing of a patent as a provisional patent application is called a priority date. You are given a priority, which means it comes after the date of your provisional patent specification will not affect your novelty, will not affect your inventive step. Is that concept clear?
Yes.
Is it clear? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is the moral of the story? That as soon as I've got my my proof of concept established, I should consider getting my work evaluated, whether it is patentable or not, number one. And number two, whether we should at all file a patent. But filing this early decision and file a provisional patent application. The moment we file a provisional patent application, our clock starts working then. Within 12 months, not wait for 12 months, but within 12 months, I have to file what is known as a complete specification. I have to file a complete specification within 12 months. So that is where it is. And if you file a provisional patent application, then within 12 months, you have to file what is known as a complete specification. I will show you later what this looks like. So within 12 months, if you don't file the complete specification, then you lose the advantage of your provisional patents. That is one. So you file, let us say, on 21st of March, your provisional patent application 2025, you should be in a position to file your complete specification. So that is the first part. Second part. So that is the Second, so I have done all the work, not just proof of concept, but I've done very extensive amount of work. And all that work I think is now reasonably complete. So rather than filing a provisional, you can directly file a complete specification with the claims. I will show you in the next class what a patent document looks like and why it's such an important document. And so that is where we say that if you file a provisional, then within 12 months you must file the complete. If you file directly a complete, right, then there is no further action left at your end for this invention. Now, and what happens is that when you file a patent application, that document remains as a secret document with the patent office for 18 months from the date of your filing. And then it is published. However, if you have the vision to be published quickly, then you can pay a certain fee for a quick publication and you can get it published. So you may ask, why should you get this published? We will talk about that next time. So broadly, what have we done today? We said that after we have completed, we have established a proof of concept, we get that evaluated using those two filters, the patent system. Then whether I'll have a commercial advantage in due course, in which case I will file patent. If I think we don't have a great commercial potential, then we will not file a patent, we will only publish it. Before I end for today, you can file your patent application. You have not yet got your patent, but the moment you file the patent application, you can go and publish your work. Then you will not lose your application of the work. Has to be done, will be done after filing your patent application. Now, I will stop at this stage today. Any questions that you have now? Any questions on what we did today? I will stop sharing.
Or in YouTube can write their question in chat box.
So now you can ask me questions in the last 5 or 10 minutes that we have, and I will open the chat box so that we can look at if there are any questions that anybody wants to ask.
Sir, who evaluates the patent?
Okay.
Is it
Yes,
sent to experts or is it, done in-house by the patent office?
No, you see, the patent office has got what are known as patent examiners. The patent examiners are trained on the patent law. And so exactly the process that these patent examiners, so your patent application goes to these patent examiners, they will put it through the filter. They will then tell you whether you will get a patent or you will not get a patent. Have I answered your question?
Yes, sir.
Have I satisfied you? Okay, okay. Any other question, please? Any other question? Please feel free. Please feel free to ask.
Can you please
Right.
repeat
Chat
this,
box.
Sorry?
this time? Could you please repeat this, the time, how early
Yeah.
one has to?
Yeah. So,
Yes.
as I said, that you have established the proof of concept. As a part of your research methodology, you have defined your problem. You have then done a literature search of literature in journals, books, everything. And then you have also looked at patent literature, put all that together, and you say, okay, you then design your work and say, this is going to be my trajectory of my research. I do my designing of my work. Then what do? I then do experiments to establish the proof of concept. Now, when I establish the proof of concept, I need to get it evaluated at that stage, whether the work which I'm doing has a commercial potential or not. If it has got a commercial potential, or if it has got a strategic, and look at both. And it has a strategic advantage, it has also a commercial potential. If it is so, then we may like to get it evaluated, my work evaluated for patentability internally. We get that particular evaluation done, and if that evaluation turns out that there's a reasonable chance of getting a patent, then we file a patent application, and we file what is known as a provisional patent application. Then our work continues. I do a lot of perfection of my invention, and having done that, within 12 months of having filed my first that provisional patent application, within 12 months, I must file the complete specification, which again in the patent office, then that will go for examination. Clear?
So one
So
more
the
thing.
12-month period is a very important period.
So one more thing. One have to
Please.
some means what are the necessary document that one needs to have to submit at the initial stage?
Tell that again, please. Okay. So the first
That was to
document,
submit at the initial stage.
yeah. So the first document is there is a form, there is an application form where you put down the names of the inventors, you put name of the institution from where you're filing, and then all the details of your title, etc., all that. Then you have to submit with it what is known as a patent specification. You write the patent specification in a particular manner in which you have to write that. It's very different from writing a paper. You write the patent specification, then you put on those claims, and then you submit. And all this detailing, which is what I plan to do next time. And the next lecture, which we will do, I'm going to request Professor Naik to have the next lecture for 2 hours. So if we can have the next lecture for 2 hours, in the 2 hours, I will try to complete the entire process of patenting. And we will go through the timelines and everything in more detail. And also, then says, if I write a research paper outlining some work that I then convert to something without many differences from the paper, does the prior existence of my research paper or preprint become an obstacle? In principle, it does become an obstacle. In principle. So ideally, you should file a patent and then you should disclose in a publication. Having said that, our Indian law also has a provision of what is known as a grace period. But we don't like to do that. It's pretty expensive. And that is that if I published, then within 12 months, that if I go and file a patent application with a certain fee, saying, look, this is what I published, this is what I'm wanting to file as a patent, then patent office may consider that, that request with a grace period of 12 months. But ideally, we should file a patent and then publish. Okay? So, thank you very much. Now the next
Sorry,
class,
I think a couple of questions are there in chat box.
are there? Okay, we'll
Yeah,
just see.
Chat
One
box.
minute. I'm just seeing now. I'm just seeing the chat. That I have answered. How much does it cost to patent in India and so in India when you file a patent, filing a patent, if you're from an academic institution, then it costs only about 1,600 rupees. But if you're from a company or from an established organization, it costs about 8,000. But the main cost is not that. The main cost is to hire the right type of patent attorneys to write your patent. And that's where the major cost is. There is a professional way in which these patent applications are to be written. So the major cost comes there. In the US, what costs, say in India, 1,600 rupees for the education institutions and 8,000 for companies and large organizations. That same thing in the US costs about $1,000. We will come to all that later. Any other question? The question says, if we file patent and publish in some other country, someone else may file. No, if someone else files a patent, if you file the patent in India and someone else sees your publication and files it elsewhere, then that person will not get the patent because your application becomes what is known as prior art, and therefore his application gets killed because that is no more novel. If it is the same invention. The last question is, what is serendipity? It's a good question. Serendipity means, you don't think about it in a logical fashion, but you don't say, oh, this would lead to this, would lead to this, would lead to this. But you see a gap and say, maybe I should do something like that. That may not be the most logical thing. That is serendipity. But it may not be as per logic. But you got a kick. You said, maybe I should do something like this. Because I believe that if it is like this, you should do something. That may not be by well-established logical method. That is serendipity. Okay? So if there are no other questions today, we'll close the session. And the next session, my request to Professor Naik will be, if I can have it for 2 hours, then in 2 hours, I will try to complete.
So next lecture will be the last one for you?
No, after next 2 hours, and then I'll have one lecture.
Okay.
So 3 hours total. 2 hours, 2 hours the next lecture, and 1 hour another lecture.
After that, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.